to see everyone on the inaugural Tuesday address, right? The Tuesday Bible study. And we are doing Philippians. This was requested at the beginning of the summer, I think, or at the end when we finished the Great Divorce. Philippians is one of my favorite Paul epistles. Chapter 2 chapter 2, 5 through 11, like, is one of those things that I can just start rattling off, like, no problem. Like that's, and it was chapter 2, 5 through 11 was one of the first Bible passages that really kind of affected me, like, very, very early on. And if you pay attention, like, my goal and how I really view the faith is really through the lens of Philippians 2. Come on in, Pam.
Hard time finding you. I almost turned around and left.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, we're in the little room. We're in the little room.
Okay.
Like that's so like that. So
Philippians was the very first study that I did in Andrew along with Eric's.
oh yeah.
I thrust into leading a Bible study.
It's a good one. It's a good one. It's a good one. Does anyone else have any experience they want to share with Philippians before we watch the video?
What did you mean by epistle?
Epistle. Oh, that means it's like a letter.
Oh, okay.
It's a letter. It's an old word for a letter.
All right.
And so it's the letter to the Philippians. Yeah. So we just call it. Is it Greek? Is epistle Greek? That's here. Hold on.
In the old church, many moons ago, they used to have the epistle lesson,
Oh, yeah, I remember.
which is now called the first lesson.
Yeah, or the second lesson.
The Old Testament
Forgot
lesson
about
and
that.
the Epistle and the Gospel.
Let's
And
see.
sometimes Psalm too.
Yeah.
Two Psalms in the olden days. When I was just
Let's see. So I have a definition. I'm looking up more information. Okay, so it's primarily from Greek, and it means like a long letter, like a formal long letter is what it means. So it's probably something in modern English is people will draft open letters. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but I saw one the other day. What was it for? It was something funny. It was an open letter to a lawnmower company. And this guy was very upset at the quality of the lawnmowers. And so he wrote this long letter kind of and just about the lawnmowers and stuff like that. So it's I think that's some modern terminology, but epistle's from the Greek, but it just means long letter. That's a good question because that's what it's from. So the letter to the Philippians. Does anyone else have any like Philippian stuff? I remember I worked at a church in North Atlanta when I was in college, and I was trying to get a job there. And I showed up one Sunday, and there was no one teaching the high schoolers. And I was like, well, I can, which I would not allow someone just off the street to teach high schoolers, but that was the nature of this church. And so they, I taught the high schoolers, and I taught them Philippians chapter 2, and like that's because it's just been ingrained inside of me. So like it's a special place inside there.
You want to know about having a stranger walk in off the street and want to teach Sunday school or lead a youth group? Ask Hope Lutheran church.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, they have an issue?
Well, they had a gentleman walk in
Yeah.
who said, I'm going to be your new youth leader. And of course they said, sure you are.
Yeah.
Anyway, and he got angry because he was refused. And that night he came back with 2 propane tanks.
Is that how they lost?
Threw them through the windows of the church and threw in a Molotov cocktail, and the church burned to the ground.
Wow. Man, yeah. So that's.
So be careful who you refuse.
You got to try to be nice. You got to try to be nice. But I have a feeling there was some other things going on.
Yeah, he tried the same thing at Morningside.
Really? Oh, wow.
But that one didn't catch.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. All right, so let's watch this video. So this is the video. It's about the handout, the piece of paper. I'm going to walk through that.
Paul's letter to the Philippians. The church in Philippi was the first Jesus community Paul started in Eastern Europe, and that story is told in Acts chapter 16. Philippi was a Roman colony in ancient Macedonia. It was full of retired soldiers, and it was known for its patriotic nationalism. And so there Paul faced resistance when he was announcing Jesus as the true king of the world. And after Paul moved on from there, those who became followers of Jesus continued to suffer resistance and even persecution, but they remained a vibrant community faithful to the way of Jesus. Paul sent this letter from one of his many imprisonments, and for a very practical reason. The Philippians had sent one of their members, Epaphroditus, to take a financial gift to Paul to support him in prison. And Paul sent back this letter with Epaphroditus to say thank you and to do a whole lot more. The design of this letter doesn't develop one single idea from beginning to end like many of Paul's other letters. Rather, Paul has arranged a series of short, reflective essays or vignettes, and they all revolve around the center of gravity in this letter, which is a poem in chapter 2. It artistically retells the story of the Messiah's incarnation, his life, death, and resurrection, and exaltation. And then in each of these vignettes, Paul will take up key words or ideas from that poem to show how living as a Christian means seeing your own story as a lived expression of Jesus' story. So Paul opens the letter with a prayer of gratefulness, and he thanks God for the Philippians' generosity, for their faithfulness, and he expresses his confidence that the life-transforming work that God has begun in them will continue into greater and more beautiful expressions of faithfulness and love. And Paul then focuses on their obvious concern at the moment, which is his status in prison. Being in a Roman prison was no picnic, but it paradoxically has turned out for good to advance the good news about Jesus. So all of the Roman guards, the administrators, they all know that Paul's in prison for announcing Jesus as the risen Lord. And his imprisonment, it's inspired confidence in other Christians to talk about Jesus more openly. And Paul's optimistic that he will be released from prison, but it's possible that he could be executed. And as he reflects on it, that actually wouldn't be so bad, because for me, Paul says, life is the Messiah. And so dying would be a gain. For Paul, his life in the present and in the future, it's defined by the life and love of Jesus for him. And so if he's executed, that means he'll be present with Jesus, which would be great for him. And if he's released, well, that would mean he could keep working to start more Jesus communities, which would be better for other people. And so that's what he hopes for. And notice how his train of thought works here. Dying for Jesus is not the true sacrifice for Paul. Rather, it's staying alive to serve others. And so that's Paul's way of participating in the story of Jesus, to suffer in order to love others more than himself. Paul then turns to the Philippians, and he urges them to participate in Jesus' example by taking up this same mindset. He says, your life as citizens should be consistent with the good news about the Messiah. So these Christians in Philippi, they were living in a hotbed of Roman patriotism, but their way of life was to be shaped by another king, Jesus. And that might bring persecution, but they are not to be afraid, because suffering for being associated with Jesus, it's a way of living out the story of Jesus himself. Which leads Paul into the great poem of chapter 2. It's rich with echoes of Old Testament texts, specifically the story of Adam and his rebellion in Genesis 1 through 3, and the poems about the suffering servant in the book of Isaiah. This poem is worth committing to memory. It is a beautifully condensed version of the gospel story. So before becoming human, the Messiah pre-existed in a state of glory and equality with God. And unlike Adam, who tried to seize equality with God, the Messiah chose not to exploit his equal status for his self-advantage. Rather, he emptied himself of status. He became a human. He became a servant to all. And even more than that, he allowed himself to be humiliated. He was obedient to the Father by going to his death on a Roman execution rack. But through God's power and grace, the Messiah's shameful death has been reversed through the resurrection. And now God has highly exalted Jesus as the King of all, bestowing upon him the name that is above all names, so that all creation should recognize that Jesus the Messiah is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Now that last statement is astounding. Paul's quoting from Isaiah chapter 45. It's a passage where all creation comes to recognize the God of Israel as Lord. Paul's point here is very clear. In the crucified and risen Jesus, we discover that the one true God of Israel consists of God the Father and the Lord Jesus. And so for Paul, this poem, it expresses his convictions about who Jesus is, and it does more. It offers the example of Jesus as a way of life that his followers are to imitate. And so that's why Paul immediately goes on to tell two stories. First about Timothy, then about Epaphroditus, because they are both examples of people living out Jesus' story. So Timothy's like Jesus because he's constantly concerned for the well-being of other people more than his own. And Epaphroditus, who the Philippians sent with their gift, he ended up risking his life to serve Paul in prison. He got so sick he almost died trying to help Paul. But God had mercy on him and Paul by sparing him the loss of a friend. Paul's point here is that these are the kinds of people who are living, breathing examples of the story of Jesus, and they are worthy of imitation. Paul then turns to his own story as an example. So those Christians who had been demanding circumcision of non-Jewish Christians, remember his letter to the Galatians, these people are still stirring up trouble for Paul, and they keep reminding him of his own past, when he used to persecute Jesus' followers, when he tried to show his right standing before God by his zealous obedience to the laws of the Torah. But like Jesus, Paul has given up all of that status and privilege. He now regards all of it as filth, and the word he uses is actually much less polite. He's given it all up to become a servant, like Jesus, to participate in his suffering and sacrificial love. And he does all of it in the hope that Jesus' love will carry him through death and out the other side into resurrection. So Paul says that for followers of Jesus, their true citizenship is in heaven, which for Paul does not mean that we should all hope to get away from earth and go to heaven one day. Rather, heaven is the transcendent place where Jesus reigns as king. And he says we're eagerly awaiting our royal Savior to come from there and return here to bring his kingdom of healing justice and transforming love to bring about a new creation. Paul then challenges the Philippians to keep living out the Jesus story. He first addresses two prominent women leaders in the church who worked alongside Paul, and they're in some kind of conflict. And so Paul pleads with them to follow Jesus' example of humility, to reconcile and become unified. Paul then urges the Philippians not to give in to fear, but despite their persecution, to vent all of their emotion and their needs to God, who will give them peace. And that peace, Paul says, it comes by focusing your thoughts on what is good and true and lovely. There's always something that you could complain about, but a follower of Jesus knows that all of life is a gift and can choose to see beauty and grace in any life circumstance. Which leads Paul to his conclusion. He again thanks the Philippians for their sacrificial gift, and he wants them to know that his imprisonments, that his times of poverty, that these are not true hardships for him. They've actually become his greatest teachers, showing him that no matter his circumstances, he has learned the secret of contentment. It's simple dependence on the one who strengthens him. Paul has come to see his own suffering as a participation in the story of Jesus. The letter to the Philippians gives us a unique window into Paul's own heart and mind. He saw his entire life as a reenactment of the story of Jesus. And you can sense in this letter his close connection to Jesus, his awareness that Jesus' love and presence is closer than his own skin. And that's what gave him hope and humility in his darkest hours. And so Paul shows us that knowing Jesus is always a deeply personal, transforming encounter. And that's the kind of Jesus that Paul invites others to follow. And that's what Paul's letter to the Philippians is all about.
All right. Okay. Well, let me make sure I did that correctly. I did not. Let's see. Okay. All right. So that is the video on Philippians, which it's great to see how the structure of the book works, where that middle poem, everything branches off of it, and that poem is beautiful there. So let's read. We'll read the first chapter. We'll read the first chapter, and then we'll talk about it. So let me share all this. I'm rusty. I don't know what I'm doing. All right. Philippians chapter 1.
The Epistle of Paul the Apostle to the Philippians.
Greetings from Paul and Timothy, bondservants of Jesus Christ, to all the saints in Christ Jesus who are in Philippi, with the bishops and deacons. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. I thank my God upon every remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine making request for you all with joy. For your fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ, just as it is right for me to think this of you all, because I have you in my heart, inasmuch as both in my chains and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel, you all are partakers with me of grace. For God is my witness, how greatly I long for you all with the affection of Jesus Christ. And this I pray, that your love may abound still more and more in knowledge and all discernment, that you may approve the things that are excellent, that you may be sincere and without offense till the day of Christ, being filled with the fruits of righteousness which are by Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. But I want you to know, brethren, that the things which happened to me have actually turned out for the furtherance of the gospel, so that it has become evident to the whole palace guard and to all the rest that my chains are in Christ. And most of the brethren in the Lord, having become confident by my chains, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Some indeed preach Christ even from envy and strife, and some also from goodwill. The former preach Christ from selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my chains, but the latter out of love, knowing that I am appointed for the defense of the gospel. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached. And in this I rejoice, yes, and will rejoice. For I know that this will turn out for my deliverance through your prayer and the supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, according to my earnest expectation and hope, that in nothing I shall be ashamed. But with all boldness, as always, so now also Christ will be magnified in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. But if I live on in the flesh, this will mean fruit from my labor. Yet what I shall choose, I cannot tell. For I am hard-pressed between the two, having a desire to depart and be with Christ, which is far better. Nevertheless, to remain in the flesh is more needful for you. And being confident of this, I know that I shall remain and continue with you all for your progress and joy of faith, that your rejoicing for me may be more abundant in Jesus Christ by my coming to you again. Only let your conduct be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent, I may hear of your affairs, that you stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel, and not in any way terrified by your adversaries, which is to them a proof of perdition, but to you of salvation, and that from God. For to you it has been granted on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for his sake, having the same conflict which you saw in me, and now here is in me.
Okay. All right. So what did you hear? What stood out to you?
I'm embarrassed. I don't know where Philippians is.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dolores. It's go into the New Testament, find the Gospels. Find the Gospels. Like what says that? Mark there, and then you want to. Where are you right now? What book are you in?
Thessalonians.
Let's go before Thessalonians.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's very short. It's very short. That's why it's hard to find. You see it yet? Or does it? You got some page difficulty? There you go. Page
Thank you.
difficulties. Page difficulties.
Okay.
No, it's fair. I mean, in that Bible, what was it? 4 pages, maybe. Like it's not very much. It's hard to find. So that's all right. All right. So yeah, it's very short. It's very short. All right. So what stood out to you in this? What stood out? Anything?
I guess I hadn't realized that he thought of, his dilemma on earth, that, he can serve people versus, what the death is gain. I didn't realize that something that he said. I haven't read much of any of this, so that was new to me.
Yeah. So the whole, that's, what verse is that? That's chapter 1, verse
20.
It is 20 and 21.
Yeah.
That's according to my earnest expectation and hope, that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but with all boldness, as always, so now also Christ will be magnified in my body, whether by life or death. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. What do you think that means? What is that? What do you think is going on there? Do you have any idea, Pam? Or anyone else in the room? It's great. It's a great verse. It's a great verse.
I think he put out his faith on God.
Yeah.
Because some of us might be go down on faith because we're serving our Lord, and then now we're in prison.
Yeah.
And then we don't have an easy life inside the prison. You have chain everywhere, things like that.
Yeah.
We might be praying and then saying, God, please do something.
Yeah.
And he did not ask for that. He only spread out his faith on God.
Yeah.
And while that in verse 3, he said he's always thinking about those who are at the church, and then he's always praying for them.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Like that. That's because we know he's in prison writing this. Yeah, right. And this is one of his most encouraging works. That he's in prison writing this, and he's kind of gotten to the point where he's like here I sit, it's if I live, awesome. I'll do all this work. If I die, awesome. Then I'll be with the Lord. That's such a place where a phrase that I really like, I feel like I say probably too much, is if they can't take it from you, they can't take it from you. And what I mean by that is so often people try to threaten in certain ways. They're like, if you do this, we're gonna do yada yada yada, and like that's and that can cause us to not want to do anything, right? But Paul, what are they going to take from him? You know, like he's like, if I die, okay, great.
Go with Jesus.
Yeah, I go with Jesus. If I live, okay, great. You know, like they can't. Paul has gotten to the point in his letter here where they can't take anything from him. Like, and that's if we can get to that same point, then it's like, oh yeah, like that's I mean, many of you have been here for a long time, but that was kind of the philosophy that we built this building on, you know, like it's like, because a lot of people, we were talking about Hope earlier, a lot of people were from Hope that were in this congregation, and Hope kind of overbuilt when they built their new building. They built one of those two
Kind of. Definitely.
Yeah. And they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford the building. And that church ended up having to close down. And so there are a lot of people that are like, oh, like what? You know, what if we have to do that? And kind of a mantra that we took on was kind of one right here where it's like, well, if we do have to close our doors, like what would happen? I don't know, go to church somewhere else, you know? Like, and it got to the point where it's like, well, the church dying isn't worth the worry, you know? And suddenly you couldn't take that away from you. So it's like, okay, well, we have the opportunity to do this good thing. We have the opportunity to do this good thing.
If all the congregation goes away, we still have a marketable property.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly. Like there was, but that's just the way it goes. There's going to be people that are always going to be threatening, and that's why I kind of make fun of people when they start. Let's see, when there are some that are like, oh, they're trying to take away Christianity and stuff like that, and it's like, I don't. Well, I'm sorry. I'm like let them. Like that's our Lord died on a cross, you know, like that's, and it rose again. Like if we really believe that this is the truth, they can do whatever they want, you know, they can roar around like any lion they want to. And I think that's where Paul is getting here. I think it's a great verse. It's a great verse. I'm in here talking. So what else? Well, what else stood out to you?
I thought it was interesting when he talked about verses 15 through 18 that some preach Christ out of pagan rivalry.
Yeah.
Some preach it out of love. It says.
Yeah.
And it, who dares go on to preach? And that reminds me of when the disciples writing Jesus said, "Oh, those people over there are preaching," and we're the ones you're supposed to be preaching, and kind of like, who cares?
If they're not against us, then they're for us, guys. Like that's well, and that's I really like this. I kind of I put it in my note to remember this one too, because he's like, there's definitely a better way, to preach it in love, and because he says, like in verse 15, some indeed preach Christ even from envy and strife, and also some from goodwill, is what the King James says. It's in love.
It's love in this one.
Yeah, which I think is a better translation for us modern audience. But and he goes, that former, they teach it because they want selfish ambition, or they're not sincere, like all these things. And he says they're doing it also so that they can add to my chains. So he's probably like, these people over here, they're preaching Christ, they're preaching against Paul type of thing. They're trying to add to my suffering. And he goes, but the latter out of love, you know, and then I love what you said there, because he gets to the point, just like with his death and his life, that he's like, but even if they're not preaching Christ in a way that I agree with or what I think is good, they're still preaching Christ. You know, like they're still preaching like that. That's so. I mean, so what do you guys think of that? But definitely he says something that he's like, this. They're preaching Christ, but they're doing it in a selfish way. We'll use that. And then there's ones that are preaching out of love. And he says the love is better. Like, how do we see this, like, in today, like in normal times, or something like that?
Tammy Faye.
Tammy Faye? Like, what do you mean by Tammy Faye? What do you mean about Tammy Faye? You get a multiplicity of generations and backgrounds.
Yeah, there was a gospel preaching female on TV who ended every sermon with, have your credit cards ready.
Yeah.
Basically, you know, she was in it for the money, not for preaching, but still, she had a message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
yeah,
they strung her up. I mean, they didn't really string her up.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the end of her life was kind of interesting too, where she I can't remember what happened. I watched like they made a movie with Jessica Chastain about Tammy Faye. And she really, at the end of her life, was an advocate for communities that do not receive a lot of advocacy like that. And I think maybe she saw in her earlier life how it wasn't going all that well. You know, like that. But no, that was,
Well,
yeah, exactly. Well, they created a theme park in South Carolina and all that stuff back in the day. And so I don't know where else do you see that? So you have like the TV preachers,
Joel Osteen.
Yeah, Joel Osteen, like that. That's oh man. Yeah. So you have like the TV preachers and the prosperity, but you also have the preachers that they teach a different type of prosperity, and they preach like a really firm. It's like you got to live like this, or Jesus isn't going to bless you. You know, like that. That's
almost doom and gloom.
Doom and gloom. You know, like the whole what's the old. Yeah, you got doom and gloom, like fire and brimstone.
Yeah, you're going
fire and brimstone.
You're going to that place.
Yeah. You're going down there. Like there's often not very much love in that either, and that's.
Trust me, I've been there and back. It's
like there's no hope there. There's no hope there, and sometimes I can tell you the pull for a preacher type for that to be the thrust of the sermons, because you believe that like if you can just get people to live right, then things will be so much better. And it doesn't get there. It never really does. Yeah, like that's and what you'll end up creating is just a bunch of people that look like you, and they're just hateful for the people around them, things like that. But to that end, like there's still people preaching Christ, which is such a beautiful outlook that even if someone is preaching Christ and they're preaching it wrong, like it's still there. It's such a good. It's like a palate cleanser, you know. It's like okay, like, and we don't have to celebrate or anything like that, but we can like they're still preaching Christ. They're still preaching Christ. So like whether we look at the little farm, like Fire and Brimstone Church on the way to Okeechobee, or we look at the like whatever like big prosperity, church where they believe you pray right, God will bless your bank account. Yeah, like that's we can look at both of those. It's like we disagree with stuff, and we may not do things that way, but like Christ's cross is still being proclaimed, and that's a very good place to be able to sit in ourselves. And I wrote, so with that verse 18, I wrote theology of the cross on the top of it. So this is right where we're talking about. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached. And in this I rejoice and will always. So theology of the cross. Did you learn theology of the cross? Do you know that term? No. Have you learned that in seminary yet?
Oh, not yet.
Okay, so that we have theology of the cross versus theology of glory. Mm-hmm. This is like a big Lutheran idea. And the theology of glory, what it teaches us is that let's say a theology of glory is like the prosperity gospel. That it's very much like, oh, well, if you give this amount of money, then God's going to bless you. Like I don't know how much of Luther's history but in the Reformation, the theologians of glory, they're like, oh, we can buy these indulgences, and our loved ones will spend less time in purgatory. They'll be able to go to heaven faster. But also those like fire and brimstone things is kind of that way too, where it's like, if I can just live a good, holy life, then God will bless what we're doing. You hear a lot of it when people are like, how people quote, if we bow down our faces, then God will bless our land and stuff like that. I can't remember the exact quote right now, but in the Old Testament, a lot of times how that verse is used is very theology of glory. And so theology of the cross is how Paul is using it here, where it's like, yeah, that may not be the right way all the time. Suffering. But Christ, the suffering. But it's still preaching Christ. And it's used for suffering a lot, because theology of the cross also, it says a thing is a thing. So suffering isn't good. If we taught here at this church that there was a step outside there, and when you left church, you had to kick your toe into that step and stub your toe every Sunday, and God would listen to your prayers then. That's theology of glory. That's if intentionally hurting myself, that's the theology of the cross is recognizing that Jesus already died. That's something that's already happened. And your salvation is wrapped up in that thing that has already happened. And so that we can suffer. We can accidentally stub our toe. We can have someone say something bad about us. We can lose our job. We can lose our loved ones. We can go through all this stuff. And we know that it's not God judging us. That's what Paul is saying here. Whether I live, whether I die, it's okay. Whether they preach Christ good or bad, we want them to use love, or the King James says goodwill. But it's all being preached. Like Paul has gotten to this point where he's like, the Spirit that Jesus died, rose again, and the Spirit of God has come. We shall do our best, but our salvation is not wrapped up in our best.
Now give me the theology of the glory again.
Yeah, theology of glory.
And
theology of the cross.
you gave, how that relates to.
So theology of glory is the opposite of being able to rest in the cross. It's theology of glory is basically you have to live up to some cross. So a theologian of glory would be, and our sinful minds always bring us into theology of glory. You know, let's say, I get sick with something, and I'm having to go and just live in a hospital somewhere, or always having to go over to some clinic or something like that. I guarantee in my mind, a thought of theology of glory will pop in. It's like, am I not praying enough?
Why is God punishing me?
Why is God punishing me? Like that, I guarantee.
I hear that when Ed and I go to visit some of the shut-ins.
Yes. Like, and it's a natural thing that our mind goes to. What did I do to be punished like this? And so that's why it's important for us to remember theology of the cross. And it's like, God isn't punishing you. You're just going through a bad time. God hasn't forgotten. You're just sick. You're going through a rough time. Like that. That's you're not God. God isn't like looking down you and shooting lightning bolts out of his fingertips at you. That's Zeus. That's not God. Like that. That's like that. That's the difference. I don't know. Are you picking it up a little bit more now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like it's kind of a subtle distinction.
If I had prayed more or something, or I went to church more, then I might be all right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's and I like to say that I would probably have feelings of those same things when you're in the midst of suffering.
Yeah,
But
I think we all do.
Oh yeah, I think we all do.
I know, 6 years ago,
Yeah.
this week, I slept in a chair beside a hospital bed,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, why?
Yeah. Why? And we don't. And the beautiful part about the suffering, I think, is that God uses that suffering. But I don't think we ever should desire to dip into the suffering to learn some lesson, type of thing. Because like something that one of my seminary professors, really good guy, he got I guess a pretty messy divorce, like few years back, and I'm sad to say this, but I need to. He has recently released a book. I should release that book because suffering tends to clarify the gospel, but I don't think we should ever desire. Like, I don't think Paul ever goes, man, I wish I would be in chains so I'd understand the gospel. Like that's, I don't think he would ever say that. But I think suffering does cause us to clarify, like, oh yeah, like there it is. And there it is. I don't know, does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, because when you're suffering about some situation, and then you are a godly person, now you start thinking other ways, and instead of see it and the good ways, you're not gonna see it like that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna see exactly why. When you ask yourself why that happened to me, you expect yourself to answer your question again, but to find your question that you ask, you have to go through the gospel to have your answer.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was over there, and then I was kind of suffering from several situations, and then every night after finish speaking with my family, my wife, and then I always ask myself, why?
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I went straight to the gospel, I said, it's kind of a little bit normal for you, because when you put your hand in God's work, the devil not gonna stay like that and then looking at you and then not checking on you. The devil gonna check on you because he don't want you to be part of the Christianity. He wants you to be in his side. Then you can do whatever you want to do with your life. Then that's not gonna mean nothing for you. But as a Christian, that means you're not for him anymore. You for God. And then now he will try to bring you. How he's gonna try? He's gonna try to make people make your life miserable. Make people come in to you, say words you don't wanna hear. Make people do things to you you don't wanna be facing that. Make you feel like you're not in your place. And then when you give up, and then the devil says, now he got you back. And then when he got you back, now you're gonna lose the prosperity or the life, the eternal life God reserved for you. So I think when we are in difficult situation, we have to always thinking when we ask ourselves the question, went to the gospel what the answer, because Christ was suffering for us before. I don't know if I'm
not just fall into
I don't know if I'm clear.
Well, it's
when to enlighten more about what you're saying too. Whenever I have in the past sat down and said, "Why me?" The obvious corollary to that is, "Why not me?" I'm capable of coming back from this. So you put a burden on me? Well, okay. Now what do we do about it?
And that's how all this stuff is working out. And so what theology of the cross, what it does for us is that when we face sufferings, because there's a lot of times when we can look at sufferings like, why me? And then we can get to this place where we're like, oh, well, the suffering is actually good. Like, no, the suffering's not good. It's like we don't desire for suffering. I think I talk about this a lot in funerals. It's why I pretty much talk about it every funeral, is that we tend to mitigate the grief in a funeral. We're like, oh, the person's gone off to be into a better place. And that's like, I feel like we're kind of lying to our own selves a little bit there, where we're like, wasn't it better when it was with me? Wasn't that better? Wasn't that better here? Like that. That's and so
it's better for me, not necessarily.
But it's and so I think in those things, I think the theology of the cross helps us then to be able to actually be open about the grief that we're feeling, the loss that we have, the difficulties that we're going. That we're like, we don't have to look at those as like, oh, well, this is just the Lord testing me in some way. Like that. That's and I think we can go through it and we're like, all right, I can actually be sad. I can have grief, I can have good times, I can have bad times. Like that's, and so then you get to live in the fullness of life. You get to enjoy the happy. You don't have to feel bad about enjoying like a good party or, getting out with some friends. You don't have to, you can grieve when something isn't going well. And I think it's kind of what Paul, like he's saying this right before verse 15, we were talking there. He says in verse 12, I want you to know, brethren, the things which happened to me have actually turned out for the furtherance of the gospel, so that it has become evident to the whole palace guard and to all the rest that my chains are in Christ. Like he basically is saying, like, yeah, this is no good. Like this, but he's got nothing to lose. Like he's like these things that actually turn this complete suffering has actually kind of made something for good here.
Yeah, he's a witness for Christ.
Yeah, and notice he never says the suffering's good.
That's how we all should be witnesses for Christ when we're out there in the supermarket.
Yeah. Paying the high prices and all that stuff like that, suffering through all of that, like that's yeah.
I think God challenges us to strengthen our faith.
Yeah. Well,
I wrote that out after my second husband passed away.
Oh yeah.
And it helped me a lot.
Yeah.
I had that printed and I had her all notes like around the house, and really.
Well, and that's what I said about that professor. He went through this nasty divorce. I guarantee he looks at the gospel differently today, just like you went through that nastiness, that no goodness, and it caused you to look at God differently.
Optimistically.
And looks at that. I think it does. It doesn't mean that we desire for that to happen again.
Mm-hmm. It did, but anyway.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean that we desire that. And
helped me a lot.
yeah, and so, but when we get through, we're talking about like Claubert and his difficulty the last 2 years. We don't desire to throw him in there. I mean, we could lock him in his office and treat him like Harry Potter or something. Like that.
Under a cabinet. Stairs.
Like that. That's but that's we're all going to go through these things, and I think that's what. And Paul has gotten to this point, I think, in his life, where it's like, this is just the way it is now. Like, whether I have good days, whether I have bad, Christ will be taught and preached, and even on those bad days, God will work it for good, and the good days, God will work it for good.
He's always our crutch.
Yeah. Like it's going over there, and I think that's really freeing, because we can sit back and like, okay, God is for us. God is for me, and I can roll with the punches, So, whereas Paul says, whether I live is Christ or die is gain. Whichever one that is. So like that's the. But did anyone else have any other things they wanted to point out in this?
I have the Jewish Bible, and verse 20, towards the end, it says, the Messiah will be honored by my body, whether it is alive or dead.
Yeah.
So he's saying that or is he just saying no matter what happens to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's what he's saying. That it'd be honored no matter what's being. Yeah. Whether I'm dead or alive.
Okay.
Like Christ, and that's why he says right after that.
For me, to live is Christ, to die is gain.
Yeah. So and I think that's a freeing spot, because you get to the point where it goes back to that statement that I like. They can't take anything from you. They can't take anything. Like that. That's if you are to this point where Paul is, where it's like, if I die, great. If I don't, awesome. They can't take anything from you. And your life then becomes like this testament of the cross and the resurrection of Jesus. And that's, I hope to live out that way. I don't know. I fail a lot. That's
welcome to the club.
Yeah, exactly. I fail a lot at it. But when you can get there, it's free. It's free, because you're fully resting in the cross of Jesus.
Just gotta keep trying.
And so was there anything else? All right, listen, there was one other thing real fast. Before we talk about all this is a great conversation today. He's alluding to it right at the beginning, right at the end of verse 7, when he says that you're partakers with me of grace. You are you are with me in all these things. And then all that theology of the cross versus theology of glory talk that we just did is all part of that. So very good. Very good. Very good. Well, I enjoyed our conversation today. For everyone watching this pre-recorded on YouTube, thanks for joining us today. Let me stop the recording. Maybe.